Welcome to Who Killed Haing Ngor. I've spent about 2 weeks in Taipei exploring a question. Could I use the murder of a prominent Asian American killed by a Taiwanese triad in the U.S. to further investigate the murder of Haing Ngor? Taiwanese dissident Henry Liu was shot to death at his home outside San Francisco in a manner similar to the Ngor killing. So I started looking into the Bamboo Union, a triad that proudly remembers the Liu assassination. It also remains active today in transnational organized crime throughout Southeast Asia. It turns out I was looking at Ngor's proximity to the Bamboo Union through the wrong lens. Ngor's work in the Hong Kong and Taiwan film industries offers a clearer perspective. My name is Patricia Nunan, and this is Who Killed Haing Ngor.
I got there early.
I'm looking at a movie trailer online. It's for a film called The Making of Crime Scenes. It's about the murder of Henry Liu.
Henry Liu's place was on 2 floors, a living space over a garage.
We see Liu's body lying on the floor of his garage. But this is a CGI recreation, a cartoon. More interesting to me is the narrator describing the crime scene.
We slipped in through the side door and shot him there, in the garage.
The narrator is Wu Tun, none other than the Bamboo Union's chief executioner who fired the shots that killed Henry Liu. He worked alongside 2 others, one of them Chen Li, the spiritual leader of the Bamboo Union, who organized the hit. The film was written by Taiwanese screenwriter Chen Wanyin and directed by Xu Che-yu. What stands out to me, besides Wu Tun's participation, The Making of Crime Scenes was released in 2021, 37 years after the Liu assassination. When I said in an earlier episode that the murder of Liu still holds a certain grip on Taiwan's collective imagination, I hope you see why. I had spent about 2 weeks in Taipei trying to see if I could link Haing Ngor's murder to the triad, the Bamboo Union. They did the dirty work for Taiwan's government, the Kuomintang or the KMT. They wanted Henry Liu dead because he was such an outspoken critic of their authoritarian rule. With his life in danger, Liu fled Taiwan. He continued to publish anti-KMT articles in the Chinese-language press from exile outside San Francisco, where he resettled with his family. So the KMT dispatched the Bamboo Union to the United States to assassinate him. Liu was gunned down in his garage, similar-ish to Ngor, who was shot to death in his carport. That, of course, could be coincidence. But after his release from prison, one of Liu's assassins, Chen Li, moved to Cambodia in 1996. The Bamboo Union was already active there in loan sharking and other criminal activities in the same window of time that Ngor was in serious financial trouble. So this trip to Taiwan was a bit of a fishing trip. I was using the Liu assassination as a way to sneak in sideways and find out if the Bamboo Union could have been involved in the murder of Ngor. After 2 weeks in Taiwan, I realized I'd been looking at it all wrong. Because Haing Ngor was an actor. Not only that, he was an actor with an affection for Taiwan. And the Taiwan and Hong Kong film industries, they're controlled by triads. The Bamboo Union is one of them.
Triad societies are, under the law, totally illegal societies. And our job was to reduce their power, their authority, their glamour, their profile, and put them in jail. And we didn't aim for the foot soldiers. We were aiming for the senior management.
Bob Ewell is the executive director of Key Risk Consulting Asia. Ewell's a Brit from Manchester, England, originally. He spent 20 years in the Hong Kong police when Hong Kong was still a British colony. That changed when it was handed over to China in July 1997. Yule was a superintendent in the Organized Crimes and Triad Bureau. His division focused on the film industry. Triads, he says, infiltrated the industry from the ground up.
It was usually complaints of extortion from film crews that were filming in the public places, where low-level triads would come along as thugs and demand protection money or disrupt the shooting. So you can imagine, you've seen, setups in the street or in a public place where the cameras are all there, the actor, and it's action. Well, you can imagine some thuggy triad walking across the set just to disrupt the take. And that's what they would do. So it was street-level thuggery at that time.
Once again, I found myself diving into Fires of the Dragon by David Kaplan. It's a book that comprehensively covers the Liu assassination. Suddenly, I was seeing details I'd glossed over before. 2 major Taiwanese film directors were involved in the Henry Liu plot. One set up the first meeting between Chen Shili and the military intelligence officer who'd enlisted him. Another actually traveled with Chen Shili to the U.S. for the assassination, but he dropped out very early on and flew home. Wu Tun, the chief executioner, had also bullied his way into the film industry. Kaplan's book lists him as a director of the 1984 film Drunken Tai Chi and another film called The Soldier's Ghost. He's listed as the foreman on a third film called Being Men. The Taiwanese journalist I was working with, Jonah Q, and I both reached out to Wu Tun's production company to try to get an interview with him. Despite repeated efforts, we never received a response. It turns out Wu Tun has nearly 40 film credits for his role as a producer. He often worked with a production company run by Chen Shili's brother, as Chinese and Hong Kong film websites reveal. It's my understanding that the term producer is pretty widely abused in film circles. It doesn't always mean what you think it should. The Taiwanese press describes Wu Tun as the muscle behind many films. That means protecting sets from the street-level thuggery that Bob Yule mentioned. But it could have been more than that.
So it wasn't really the dollar figure that was the issue here. It was the significant pulling power of the actors that were in demand, and the triads really muscling in and saying, you're going to work for us now. You're going to work for our film studio. And a number of quite senior members of a particular triad society, the Sanyon Triad Society, actually ran a movie studio, a very successful one. And if they wanted a particular movie star to appear in an action movie, then if he wouldn't sign the contract, then muscle was required. And it got very violent. So it wasn't really the dollar figure that was the issue. It was really the face value and the dollar figure that could be derived from having this action movie star of the time in your movie. So that's how serious it got.
Actors grew tired of it.
And eventually that grew to a point where I think it was 94 and 95, when all the major Hong Kong movie stars came out and started protesting in the street. Well, you can imagine, you people like your Jackie Chans of this world and the Chow Yun-Fats of this world, all walking in the street, fairly unannounced, caused something of a stir, to say the least. And their major complaint was triad violence in the film industry.
In April 1985, Haing Ngor visited Taiwan. He was there to promote The Killing Fields. It was actually the 17th of April, making it the 10-year anniversary of the fall of Phnom Penh to the Khmer Rouge. It was just weeks after his Oscar win for Best Supporting Actor. Ngor received a hero's welcome at the airport, according to the newspaper Taiwan Today. Fans draped flower wreaths around his neck. He was surrounded by the press, by film industry insiders, and scores of refugees from the Indochina Wars, from Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. Taiwan, you might remember, was founded in 1949. Its government was formed by exiles from the defeated nationalist army led by Chiang Kai-shek. They lost China's civil war to Mao Zedong's communists. That means Taiwan owed its creation to anti-communist thinking. Of course, Ngor was virulently anti-communist. He had barely survived the Khmer Rouge, who had destroyed his country. They were, of course, communist extremists who had been supported by China. I know that the people of free China are very well qualified to understand the cruelty of communists. That's what Ngor said at the airport, according to Taiwan Today. The fact that he was in Taipei on the anniversary of April 17, Ngor called that a wonderful arrangement by the god of fate. With an Academy Award to his name, Ngor was a movie star in demand. He told reporters he was thinking of starring in a film to be produced by Taipei's Central Motion Picture Corporation. That's an official production company, or some might say a propaganda arm of Taiwan's KMT government. And remember, I think Ngor was probably struggling beneath a landslide of untreated trauma because of the Khmer Rouge. Here's an instance when the Khmer Rouge were trying to force Ngor to admit he was a doctor, an educated, intelligent man.
If you say yes, don't forget your whole family behind you, your girlfriend, your father, your mom, your daddy, your brother, everything. Got killed by Khmer Rouge. Because at that time, Khmer Rouge don't like educated people, don't like intelligent people.
He couldn't do it, not for his own sake, but because he had to defend his family.
And I thought I will die next minute, but I have to keep my whole family behind me. And I beg those Khmer Rouge, please, shoot me.
Given experiences that horrific, think of how well aligned it would have been with Ngor's spirit and his sense of purpose to make another movie that was anti-communist. So he did. The movie is called The Kinmen Bombs, and it came out in 1986. It's a heroic depiction of Taiwanese resistance to Chinese aggression in 1958 on the island of Kinmen. That's also known as the Second Taiwan Straits Crisis. You can see the trailer on YouTube. Ngor has a minor role. The following year, Ngor was in The Eastern Condors. It's an action movie set in post-war Vietnam made by a Hong Kong Chinese director. And just as a footnote, Ngor's agents didn't really know anything about these movies. It appears he negotiated these deals on his own behalf. As Bob Yule pointed out, the Hong Kong and Taiwan film industries were essentially run by triads, and actors were frequently the victims of extortion. So I'm not going to say this gentleman's name, but in Eastern Condors, Ngor co-starred with an Asian actor who went on to star in a significant Hollywood franchise, and he also became an Oscar-winning director. This individual also worked in at least one film with Wu Tun, the Bamboo Union's chief executioner. That's my missing link. Through the film industry, Ngor was 1 degree of separation away from Wu Tun, the man who shot to death Henry Liu. That puts him 2 degrees of separation away from Chen Chi-li, who orchestrated the Liu assassination and later moved to Cambodia. I want to underline the fact that I have not proven anything. As journalists know, rumors sometimes lead to scoops, and circumstantial evidence, like smoke, sometimes leads to fire. So let's look at the smoke. The Bamboo Union already had a presence in Cambodia as debt collectors and loan sharks, using silver shops as their cover for money laundering, according to a Taiwanese academic who studied them. Ngor's window for working in Cambodia was from early 1992 to early 1996. By mid-1995, Ngor openly told journalists he was facing financial difficulty. We know he was borrowing money, including $33,000 in the U.S. in May 1995, according to probate, and later that year, he took out some $50,000 in loans in his girlfriend's name, according to his friend Cece I interviewed last season. Together, that's over $175,000 in today's money. Does all this mean that in Cambodia, Ngor would gravitate toward moneyed-up Taiwanese or film industry connections for a loan? A friendly acquaintance of Ngor's reported seeing him in Phnom Penh, hanging out with people he described as Chinese gangsters. This was a triad with established footholds across the U.S., including in San Francisco and Los Angeles. So is it really so hard to imagine the Bamboo Union pulling a move out of its old playbook and killing Ngor in the States, just like they killed Henry Liu? Now it's time for me to rain on my own parade. I found out nothing new about Larry, the suspect the Innocence Center and I are looking into, because of the falling out he had with Ngor over a banking license. And I haven't found anything that links the Bamboo Union specifically to Cambodia's banking system in the 1990s. The people I've spoken to who knew Ngor have told me about business associates from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. No one's told me about any Taiwanese. I will also say that one retired intelligence officer I spoke with, whose expertise is in Asian organized crime, found my theory linking Henry Liu to Haing Ngor laughably circumstantial. I actually feel much better informed about Ngor's proximity to major organized crime figures, and I've got a much greater understanding of the seeds of organized crime in Cambodia. But in terms of actual evidence, my trip to Taiwan was a wash. There's also the question of how triads deal with debt. Here's Bob Ewell.
They don't like killing people that are in debt to them because they don't get the money back. Unless they have a guarantee from someone else, a family member, or we used to find they'd sign over power of attorney to whatever, or their home would be reassigned to the group. There'd be collateral signed over. Because if you kill them and that's not in place, you never get your money back. And these guys aren't stupid, right? So look around, he's loan sharking, and he was massively in debt. Why did they kill him? Because how did they guarantee they would get their money back? Killing him does one thing. It cuts off the supply gate of getting repaid. Unless you've got in place collateral that you can use once he's gone.
So he would have had to have made an arrangement in advance.
Yeah, and it's fallen flat, it's not worked, so the killing is a message to those who have got the collateral that he's pledged. Pay up.
There was collateral in Ngor circles. Highly valuable collateral, if you ask me. But we're not ready to go there yet. For now, I'll just have to see where the investigation takes me. Now I just want to tie up some loose threads. When Chen Shili established himself in Cambodia in 1996, he quickly became an ally to high-ranking officials like Chia Sim, who was then close to Prime Minister Hun Sen. He was even granted the status of Okna, which is an honorary title for the elites, almost like a lord. Chen Shili was living a comfortable life in Phnom Penh. He even had a casino and a nightclub to call his own, right smack in the middle of town. Then, in the year 2000, he made a mistake. He publicly badmouthed Cambodia, calling it a dangerous place. Prime Minister Hun Sen took it personally. There were also murky allegations that Chen Shili was involved in the murder of another Taiwanese businessman in Phnom Penh. He was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in jail, convicted on weapons charges. A year later, he was released and moved to Hong Kong. There, he died of cancer in 2007. Wu Dun, the Bamboo Union's chief assassin, died in February 2026, as I was producing this episode. There's another twist to the Henry Liu assassination. It turns out he may have been a spy, a double agent even, on the payroll of both China and Taiwan, charges his widow denied. Some even say he was a triple agent, also working as a paid informant to the FBI. And remember how those different factions of the Bamboo Union were trafficking Taiwanese people to Cambodia, while at the same time other factions were trying to rescue them? There's one more through-the-looking-glass moment. Remember White Wolf, the Bamboo Union original gangster I interviewed on my first day in Taiwan? When Chen Chi-li fled to Cambodia, White Wolf fled to China. Both left because Taiwan's new democratic government that took over from the KMT were cracking down on organized crime. White Wolf ended up staying in China for 17 years. There, he apparently had a big change of heart because the Bamboo Union has flipped allegiances. They're now pro-Beijing. The Bamboo Union is still doing dirty work on behalf of an authoritarian power, but now it's the Chinese Communist Party. My name is Patricia Nunan, and this is Who Killed Haing Ngor? My thanks to Punavision at the Punahou High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, for the audio of Haing Ngor. It's from his visit to the school on April 8, 1985, which, incidentally, was just days before he went to Taiwan. I'm posting a bonus episode outside the investigatory arc that explores how Cambodia went from the darling of the international community in the 1990s to the safe haven for cyber scams that it is today. In the next main episode, we'll be back in Cambodia. It's time to get into the nitty-gritty about that bank license deal between Haing Ngor and the suspect we called Larry. If you knew Haing Ngor and would like to contribute, even just an interesting anecdote or a fond memory or a not-so-fond memory, please get in touch. If you have information you think could be useful to the investigation, please get in touch. You can find me at whokilledhaingnor@gmail.com. I'm on Telegram as MP Nunan. If you'd like to support the investigation, there's a donation button on the webpage, whokilledhaingnor.com. Thank you for listening.